Thank you very much. First of all, to clear up a little bit of confusion, we've just changed the name of the company from Design for Sustainability to Design to Sustain. So if it's inconsistent, it's because of a recent change of name. What I'd like to do is to go over what we're doing in the GREAT project. And it's a 2-year project. And I think what we have to do first is to indicate why it came about. Because it's too easy to get involved in the details. Essentially, it's a response, one of many European responses to the big problem of an unsustainable and wasteful use of energy. As you will know, we're facing a diminution of fossil fuel energy resources in spite of the oil price drop. Markets are certainly unstable, and the environmental effects of fossil energy use are becoming more and more obvious. And in Europe, given the actual exhaustion of North Sea resources and other resources, we're facing an insecurity of energy supply. And to top all that, and that's why smart grids are particularly important, it is becoming increasingly obvious that we're wasting energy through overgeneration when it's not needed, and inefficient consumption. And GREAT is a little response to this very large problem. But we still think it's great. So, having got problems, of course, in any business sense, you think of opportunities. A social problem, an economic problem, a technological problem is an opportunity for an innovation. And that's how we approach GREAT. And the opportunities are for researchers and for enterprises, and GREAT aims to put both of them together so that we do get innovations. And inevitably, if you get innovations, you get economic benefits. Now, the last speaker, Stephen, provided a lot of examples of innovations which are currently underway. And what we're trying to do in GREAT is to increase the number of innovations, to actually also increase new business models. And just anecdotally, in Wales, there's now a new smart car which is being produced, but is not being sold, it's being leased. You cannot buy this car, you can only lease it, which is an example of a new business model which is coming about. And part of the reason for the business model is, in fact, recycling and reuse at the end of the car's life. GREAT has 3 focus areas, not just smart grids, regrettably, although I know this meeting is about smart grids. It came about from renewable energy, looking at renewable energy sources and technologies, and particularly how they're found in distributed generation. In other words, small sources of renewable energy, small numbers of wind turbines, relatively small numbers of solar panels, or biomass, or small hydro. And of course, you need smart grids, you need intelligence to put them together. And so what we did when we put GREAT together is we combined renewable energy, distributed generation, and smart grids. Because in fact, they only make sense together. You really need smart grids if you've got distributed generation, and distributed generation is essentially generation from renewable sources, though not always. And together they produce optimum results. The reason GREAT is needed is, of course, because we're not exactly sure how we do this very well, as again was pointed out by the last speaker. There's no standard control algorithm, there's no clear roadmap, though it's getting slightly clearer. The future is, as was said, not a completely clear crystal ball. And as we've gone along, we've found out there have been a number of problems which GREAT has to address. To some degree, these form the context of GREAT. smart grid policy has been very much top-down from the major generators and distributors. And 2 weeks ago, I was in Brussels at a presentation given by EDF, who, along with the Belgian distributor, were talking about how difficult it was to integrate renewable energies into the grids, how there were many problems, how they needed a large base load, and how they needed fair pricing to take account of the new small amounts of renewables, small packages of renewables coming in, because they admitted there were large amounts of renewables. So it's been driven to a large degree by the big players, and regulations and the ability of small enterprises and small generators to get into the big networks has been restricted, which of course means insufficient attention to distributed generation. And we've tried to look at that and see how this can be developed, how small enterprises can get into renewable energies, can get into smart grids. Now, often these new enterprises can come in at a very basic level. If I take the region in which I live, we did a map of our smart grid supply chain, which included lots of people doing very basic engineering, but supplying parts to wind turbines, supplying parts to fitting solar panels. And the opportunities for engineering companies and other companies, and we had survey companies, geologists, who can all be involved. And this is a growing market, and our aim is to get more and more enterprises involved. Now, one of the other problems we faced was the neglect of rural areas. GREAT has two partners which are in predominantly rural areas in the west of Ireland and the north of Scotland. And in these areas, distributed generation and even off-grid solutions can deliver benefits. And this has not been given a priority. And what GREAT does is try to look at this. When we get beyond the problems addressed, we find what we call detail deficits. And there's been quite a large number of European studies on small enterprises and their energy use. And often, they're not aware of what's possible. They're not aware of how they can actually simply save money through more efficient use of energy sources, how they might retime their activities to actually be smarter in their use of energy, and actually they might generate part of their own energy. SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises, are often unaware of what's possible. And if they are aware of what's possible, they don't know how to get into the market or how to do the changes because they don't have time. If you run a small business, you don't have time. This is the big problem. Therefore, we looked at how we could help them. And there are some tools out there to assist small and medium-sized enterprises, but not sufficient. And we wanted to look at how we could redress this balance. Also, as I mentioned earlier on, there are opportunities, and this is very much a growth market, given EU targets for renewable energy use, EU targets for smart grids. There's a lot of opportunities for small firms, and we wanted to try and get small firms involved in this market. And we've got a series of actions to try and do that. Also, and finally, and which was again mentioned by the last speaker, so we keep beating the same drum, slightly different position, policy doesn't take adequate account of distributed generation. It makes it difficult to connect to the grid. If you're a distributed generator, there are all kinds of legal impediments, and it neglects again the small enterprise. And this is different in the different countries. So, having dealt with a project which deals with renewable energy, distributed generation, and smart grids, I got a bit fed up of using all these words, so I decided I would call it smart energy from now on. I hope it catches on, but if it doesn't, it'll save a few words in this presentation. So what is GREAT? GREAT is a project supported by the Northwest Europe Interreg programme. It brings together 10 partners from 4 countries. It's led by Udres in Ireland, with a second Irish partner. It's got 3 UK partners, nicely spread from the north of Scotland to the southeast of England, 2 partners in the Netherlands, and 3 partners in Belgium. And the partners are of different kinds: development agencies, universities, enterprises, and networks. So we're reasonably balanced. And here's a map. Not the best map, but you can see north of Scotland, Energy North, Westbeek and Udres in Ireland, D2S, my own organisation in the north of England, Basildon southeast, a nice cluster in Belgium, KU Leuven, Smart Grid Flanders, University of Hasselt, and in the Netherlands, University of Wittenberg and Oost-NV. So we're nicely spread across Northwest Europe. Regrettably, no one from Germany or France, but quite a nice partnership. So what are we doing? As I said, we're addressing the basic problems. We're enabling SMEs to optimize their energy management and participate in smart energy development. We're making SME, to do that, we make them aware of internationalization opportunities, and we enable them to build consortia of small and medium-sized enterprises and other bodies such as universities, so that they can actually develop smart energy applications or get into smart energy supply chains. And we're also disseminating smart energy approaches. That's what we're doing. And what have we actually done? We've actually developed tools which are simple Excel tools for energy optimization in small and medium-sized enterprises and in communities. So community bodies, small and medium-sized enterprises can download these tools, use them, and see how they can improve their energy performance and see how energy generation, distributed generation, would benefit them. We've involved a significant number of community organizations, and community energy has become a significant element of the development of the project, certainly in Scotland, Ireland, and in my own region, where we've actually set up a new community organisation for community energy. We've involved enterprises, and enterprises last week were together in the Netherlands, Irish and Dutch, and one from the southeast of England, and from outside the region, from Denmark, were getting together to see how they could get involved and how they could work together. We're developing dissemination centres. Oost-NV in the Netherlands are furthest advanced, but we're also developing them in the other participating regions. We're producing a number of policy and good practice recommendations. Some are now in draft, but it'll all be complete by October when the project ends. So we're addressing many of the same problems that Stephen talked about regulation, helping SMEs, helping enterprises into innovation. Where are we now? Nearly at the end of the presentation. So after 2 years, we haven't changed the world, although we've got a great project. The basic challenges remain. Smart energy requires effort and coordination. That will continue for the foreseeable future. The roadmap is not yet clear, though it's becoming slightly less hazy. Policy and regulation changes are needed at a European and at national levels. One of the things which is crucial, which is important to me because this is an area which we work in, is interaction with the building fabric is vital. Buildings are responsible for 40% of carbon emissions in the EU, and to build smart grids, we need distributed generation, we need intelligent consumption, but we also need very energy efficient buildings. And that has become increasingly apparent as we've gone through grade. You always find out something you didn't expect to learn when you do a project. Enterprises need further networking. It's interesting, as I was told just before this meeting, that the Irish enterprises which came across to the Netherlands, some of them hadn't met one another beforehand, but they want to work together afterwards. So networking happens at a regional and an international level, and that needs to continue. So basically, we want to be smarter and greater, and I hope I've given you a brief overview of what greater is. I'm happy to answer questions now or later. Thank you.